Joining me now to break it down is forensic expert and criminologist Xanthe Mallett. Xanthe, good to catch up with you. Firstly, what's your reaction to today's verdict?
Hello, Danica. Well, you never know which way a jury is going to go. I've been doing this for too long to try and predict that, but certainly it's been a fascinating case to watch unfold over the 10 weeks. And obviously, we've all been waiting with bated breath for 7 days almost now for the jury to come back with a decision. I am pleased that they made a unanimous decision, because I would hate to see this go to a mistrial if they hadn't been able to achieve that, because obviously for the families, the Pattersons and the others involved in this, the Wilkinsons, this has been a very, very long process and heartbreaking regardless of the outcome.
Oh, look, that's a very, very fair point. It would be very difficult. They took 7 days, this jury. What was the key evidence that stood out in your mind that would have most convinced them of Erin Patterson's guilt?
Well, obviously in Australia, we can't talk to juries to see why they reached the conclusion that they did, which I would love to have done it in this case. I'd love to have been a fly on that wall to hear the deliberations. But for me, what stood out was the litany of lies. Now, the judge made very clear that a liar does not make a murderer, and I have to agree. But I'm assuming that the jury reached the same conclusion as many others, that it's very difficult for the jury to believe Erin Patterson's account when she gave her evidence, given the lies that she admitted to. And ultimately, that was balanced out against the 50 or so other witnesses that they heard, and they reached the conclusion that there was intent in this case, and therefore she was guilty of murder and attempted murder.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because Erin Patterson, she admitted throughout that she had lied, from lying that she had cancer when she didn't, lying about why she invited the group over to lunch in the first place. That would not have helped, would it, when it had come to the presumption of innocence?
Well, they had to weigh that up very carefully against the rest of the evidence, but ultimately, I don't think it did help. For example, she initially denied the different plates and then gave a different reason. And, there were, as you say, the lies about the cancer diagnosis. There were the lies about the dehydrator and getting rid of that. There was the lies about the foraging. And all of this came out, obviously, in front of the jury. And I don't think that would have helped her case. And I think her choosing to give evidence, obviously, most of the time people don't give evidence in their defense, and that's totally their own right to maintain their silence. But I think that would have been absolutely crucial for the jury to get a sense of who Erin was as a person and to hear what happened allegedly in her own words.
And look, the reality of all this now is she is now classified as one of Australia's worst female killers. And, you look at her, she just looks like your average Australian woman. What made her do it, do you think?
Well, that's the $64,000 question at this stage. Now, I have to say that Erin has maintained her innocence throughout, and I imagine she will continue to do so. So, we're all guessing as to why somebody would go to these extremes, and kill a number of members of their own family. And it's such an awful way to. Death cap mushroom poisoning is just a terrible, terrible way to die. And so that's the question everyone is asking. Without her having a review by a psychologist or psychiatrist, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to guess. But also weighing up, what is the worst killer? Certainly she is a female mass murderer now formally, and that is very unusual. And I think that's one of the reasons the case has garnered so much international attention.
Yeah, it has. It's making headlines everywhere. Fascinating to see what happens now. I'm sure her lawyers will start an appeals process. Xanthe Mallett, nice to see you. Thank you very much for joining me on the show this evening.